Hello everyone, welcome to the second video in the series of stress and its management. My name is Udita Sharma. I am Assistant Professor in the Department of Psychology, the Bhopal School of Social Sciences, Bhopal. In the previous video, we took an overview of stress, the meaning of stress, the types and symptoms of stress and the major sources of stress. In this lecture, we will be discussing what are the consequences of stress. So, let us begin this session by taking a brief overview of the session. We will begin by revising the definition of stress, what does stress mean, followed by the health consequences or the physical consequences of stress, then the psychosocial consequences, the impact of stress on cognition, the impact of stress on your performance, and then finally the impact of stress on your workplace performance. Now, let us begin by revising what does stress mean. Stress can be defined as a negative emotional experience accompanied by predictable biochemical, physiological, cognitive and behavioral changes that are directed either towards altering the stressful event or accommodating its effect. In simpler terms, whenever something threatening or stressful happens in your surrounding or with you in any form of life circumstances, our attempt is either to minimize the damage from that stressful event or to accommodate and adjust to that change. This whole process of that adaptation or dealing with that stressor is what is known as stress. Now, before we take a look at the consequences of stress, it is important to know what exactly does stress do to your body, how does it function inside your body. So, if I give you a brief overview of it, the autonomic nervous system in our body consists of the sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is active when we are under stressful situations and the parasympathetic nervous system is active when you are in calm situations or when you are in situations of rest and relaxation. In those situations, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system. Now, as I mentioned that whenever we are going through stressful situations, we are activating, our body automatically activates the sympathetic nervous system. Whenever our body activates the sympathetic nervous system, it means that your body has to choose between fight or flight as a response. Fight means to face that situation, to face that challenge and to deal with it in a straightforward manner, or the second response that our body can choose is flight, which means to run away from that situation, to not face that situation or to remove yourself from that situation totally. So, those are the fight or flight responses that are activated whenever the sympathetic nervous system is active. Sympathetic nervous system, again I will clarify it, sympathetic nervous system is activated when your body is aroused, when you perceive a threat, when you perceive a challenge, when you perceive a change. In those kind of situations, sympathetic nervous system is aroused. Now, let us take a look at what happens inside your body when your sympathetic nervous system is aroused. What happens inside your body when you are under stressful situations? Your body parameters basically change and try to adapt to situations. For example, your pupils will expand. Your pupils will expand in an attempt to take in more and more of the visual field, to let more and more light enter your eyes, so that in case you have to face the situation which is fighting or you have to take a flight from that situation, in both cases your body is prepared. Similarly, your breathing becomes shallow as well as fast, so that it can support you whether you choose to fight or to flight. Your heart starts pumping blood at a faster rate. The blood from your central region of your body, from the core of your body, move towards your extremities, which are your hands and limbs. This happens so that in case you have to fight somebody or in case you have to run away from that situation, if there is an increased blood circulation in your limbs, your body will feel more energized, you will be able to do that with more power and more speed. Your blood, as I mentioned, the blood from your digestive system dilates towards the extremities of your body. The glucose level in your blood is increased so that you can gain more and more energy. This is why when we are stressed, when we are studying for our examination, for example, we do not feel sleepy. One day before the examination, you might not feel sleepy in the afternoon, and you might also not feel sleepy till very late in the night, because you are operating on a high level of glucose in your blood, so that your body can be energized for a long period of time. And whether you have to face that situation or run away from that situation, for both of those situations you have sufficient energy. So, changes in your pupil, your breathing becomes fast, heart starts to pump blood fastly, or your digestive processes stop and blood is diverted towards your extremities. These are just few examples of the kind of changes that takes place when the sympathetic nervous system is activated. Now, whenever, as I mentioned, whenever you are aroused or you are facing any form of threat, you will face a situation wherein you have to choose between fight or flight, and this is exactly when you are facing a stress. This is exactly when you are dealing with a stress. Now, when we have understood that how your body deals with stress, what happens inside your body whenever you are going through a stress, let us take a look at how this entire process impacts you in several different ways. So, if we look at the health consequences or the physical consequences of stress, things like declining in immune system functioning, increased risk of cardiovascular disorders, increased risk of diabetes, gastrointestinal tract disorder, asthma, migraine, and endocrine fluctuations. All of these are examples of the physical consequences of stress. If you take a step back and recall what we just discussed about the sympathetic nervous system, you might be able to understand these consequences better. The first point here says decline in immune system functioning, because all your body's resources are diverted towards facing that fight or flight situation. Your body does not get sufficient time and resources to work on building your immune system or to work on killing those foreign agents in your body. Similarly, the increased risk for diabetes. I mentioned that whenever we are under prolonged period of stress, the glucose level in our body rises. Now, when this happens for a prolonged period of time, it gradually starts impacting your insulin level, your cells, to a point that the person becomes prone to developing diabetes. I also mentioned that the blood from your digestive system is diverted towards your extremities, which can be related to the point of gastrointestinal tract disorders, indicating that either your digestion is affected, or because of stress, the hormones which are being secreted, the stress reactions that are being secreted by the body are hampering the normal digestive processes, and they may lead to problems such as loss of appetite, peptic ulcers, excessive acidity, digestive issues, and things of that sort. Our breathing is also hampered when we are under prolonged stress, which can be related with the development or the aggravation of existing asthma in individuals. And finally, endocrine fluctuations, because whenever our body is releasing stress hormones for a very prolonged period of time, it hampers or it interrupts with all other kinds of hormonal functioning. So, these were just few examples of the health consequences of stress. Next, let us take a look at the psychosocial consequences of stress, psychological as well as relating to your interpersonal relationships. The psychosocial consequences of stress include things like anxiety and depression, unhealthy coping behaviors. Unhealthy coping behaviors include things like binge eating, binge watching a particular kind of content, indulging in excessive alcoholism, drug consumption, following an unhealthy lifestyle like not sleeping, or increase risk taking behaviors. Things of that sort would come under unhealthy coping behaviors. So, whenever an individual is under prolonged stress, the tendency of displaying unhealthy coping behaviors greatly increase. Unhealthy lifestyle, another consequence of prolonged stress. Then negative affect, irritability and maladjustment can also occur. It can also start occurring. By maladjustment, here we mean that since we become very sensitive, irritable, we become more prone to mood swings, we become less thoughtful in stressful situations, less careful in social situations, that might lead to maladjustment of the individual. Moving ahead, prolonged stress can also lead to social withdrawal. The person might feel that he or she is not able to adjust well in the social situations, or they might not want to interact with individuals for any longer. Another psychosocial impact can be poor decision making, which might make its impression in the adjustment level of an individual, in the coping levels of coping mechanisms of an individual and things of that sort. Finally, prolonged stress can greatly impact your interpersonal relationships. The chances of having interpersonal conflicts greatly increase when the person is under prolonged stressful situations, because your emotions are heightened, your decision making is impaired, your judgment is impaired. In such situations, when you are already overwhelmed, we are not able to deal effectively with our relationships, we are not able to allocate appropriate time, attention and affection to those relationships, which ultimately leads to conflicts. Moving ahead, let us now discuss the effects of stress on cognitive functioning. As we have discussed earlier, cognition in psychology basically means things which are related to your thinking, memorization, thought process, learning, judgment, decision making. All of these things of these sorts come under cognitive functioning. So, what we are trying to say here is that stress plays a negative impact on your on the cognitive functioning or performance of an individual. And the things I just listed under the cognition, that what all comes under cognition, are all impacted by stress. For example, your memory, your memorization power might become weak. This can be seen when we just try to learn something, we just try to mug up something few hours before exam. When you are extremely stressed, extremely nervous, you try to memorize that thing, and for the moment you believe that you have learned that thing, but the moment you enter the examination hall, it has blanked out from your mind. You can't recall that particular thing anymore. That indicates that stress takes a toll on your memory. Stress might also impact your attention and concentration level, which is why individuals who are under extreme pressure or extreme stressful situation are more prone to accidents. They become very absent minded. You might be talking to that person standing in front of them, but they might not pay appropriate attention because of excessive stress. Their attention and concentration is impaired. Other ways in which your stress can impact your cognitive functioning is symptoms like excessive worrying, forgetfulness, lack of organization. Lack of organization here means you are not able to clearly classify and organize things, or you are not able to classify or organize your thoughts, your speech. All those things can be clubbed under lack of organization. Your decision making is impaired, judgment is impaired, as we just discussed. And then a pessimistic approach or negative affect, or constant racing of thoughts which are negative in nature, which are detrimental in nature. Those kind of thoughts keep on emerging when the person is under prolonged stress. Apart from these, the executive functioning is also greatly impaired when we are going through stress. Executive functioning includes tasks which are of higher mental ability, such as things like planning, reasoning, problem solving, critical analysis, things of that sort. So, that is why it is said that when we are under extremely stressful situations, we should not make big commitments or big judgments, because our judgment, our rationality is not at its optimum level in such circumstances. As we have just seen, our executive functioning is also affected. Moving ahead, now let us see how stress impacts your performance. To understand this, we have a law which is known as Yerkes-Dodson law, which was proposed in 1908. It is also known as the inverted U law. The inverted U law states the relationship between arousal and performance. It basically indicates that what is the relationship if the level of arousal, which here can also which indicates stress. So, the Yerkes-Dodson law talks about how the increase in arousal or stress leads to an increase or decrease in your performance. What exactly is that relationship? Let us take a look at that. So, according to this law, the Yerkes-Dodson law, a graph of which you can see right now in your screen, it is also known as the inverted U law, because as we can see, the shape of the graph moves in an inverted U manner. The graph indicates that when the arousal level is low, your performance is also weak, but as arousal level increases, your performance also increases. There comes a point when your arousal is optimum, or the amount of stress you are experiencing, that stress is at its best possible level, and that is exactly the point wherein your performance will also be the strongest. However, if your arousal or stress exceeds beyond the optimum level, this red line right here indicates the optimum level of stress. Now, when your stress increases the optimum level, your performance again starts to decline. So, this law basically stated that there is a relationship between your arousal and performance level up to a certain level. As your arousal increases, your performance will also increase hand in hand. However, once the arousal reaches its optimum level, once your arousal reaches its optimum level, your performance will be best. However, once it rises beyond the optimum level, it goes to even higher sides, then your performance will again start to decline. This is what the Yerkes-Dodson law says, and this is a very important and significant law when we talk about stress and performance. Now, let us move ahead and take a look at how does stress affect you in your workplace settings, specifically at workplace or in organizational settings. We discuss the impact of stress in organizational or workplace settings because it is a widely researched and widely discussed areas these days. The study of stress in workplace is of extreme importance and significance in these days. So, let us take a look at how stress impacts your performance in your workplace. Firstly, stress might lead to affective exhaustion, emotional draining of an individual. Secondly, decreased organizational commitment. Organizational commitment in general terms, not very specific, but in general terms, organizational commitment can be understood an individual's dedication and willingness for that particular organization. So, when an employee is going through prolonged stress, this organizational commitment might decrease, the job performance would decrease. The people who are experiencing high levels of stress might experience job dissatisfaction. Employee absenteeism will also be at a peak when people are going through prolonged stress. Apart from that, as we have just seen, our cognition is also impacted by stress, our organization skills are also impacted by stress, which brings us to our next point, poor time management. People will not be able to cope up and organize their tasks in the best possible way. Then stress will also have a negative impact on teamwork, again something which can be related to the emotional consequences of stress or the interpersonal consequences of stress we just discussed. So, stress would also take a toll on the teamwork, and finally, it might impair the communication within the organization and within team members. So, these were the effects of stress in your workplace. Now, when we have discussed these different consequences of stress, whenever we talk about consequences of stress, it is very important to know the general adaptation syndrome or the GAS model of stress. This is also often abbreviated as GAS model of stress, which was proposed by Hans Selye, who is also known as the father of modern stress. So, let us quickly go through this general adaptation syndrome. This This general adaptation syndrome basically says that whenever an individual is stressed, whenever we are going through a stressful situation, that occurs through 3 different phases. We experience stress, or we adapt to stressful situations by passing through 3 different situations. The first situation is the alarm stage. The alarm stage says that as soon as you encounter something threatening or something challenging, your body enters the fight or flight response. As soon as you face something challenging, your body would try to decide that should I fight this situation or should I run away from this situation. So, if you can recall, as soon as your body enters the fight or flight mode, that also indicates that the functioning of your body would be changed. The sympathetic nervous system would be activated. So, things like your lungs will try to inhale more and more possible, your pupil will dilate, your blood will be diverted towards your extremities. All those features that happen in that state of your body will be seen in this alarm stage. Then we progress to the second stage of this model, which is the resistance stage. In the resistance stage, the body tries to return to its normal physiological functioning. The body tries to return to this. However, there are certain body parameters which are still fluctuating. For example, your blood glucose levels may remain high, or the stress hormones which your body is secreting, those stress hormones may still be high, because the body is still trying to show resistance to that stress. Your body is trying to adapt to that change. That is what the resistance state signifies. Finally, the last stage of this model is the stage of exhaustion. If the stressor still continues, even after passing these 2 stages, if the stressor still continues, the body's capacity and resources start to deplete. The body can no longer compete with all those stressors which are incoming, and because of the prolonged exposure and prolonged wear and tear of all your internal organs, your heart, because in the alarm stage and resistance stage, your lungs will be functioning more, your heart will be functioning more, your digestive system would be deprived of blood for longer periods of time, your body might be deprived of sleep for longer periods of time. So, when stress prolongs and you reach this exhaustion stage, your body is starting to lose its resources. It can no longer fight with these stresses effectively, which results in exhaustion and the person becoming more prone to disease and other forms of problems. This indicates the exhaustion or the last stage of general adaptation syndrome. These were the 3 stages which were proposed by Hans Selye, and these stages basically indicate that whenever you go through any stress, your body goes through any stress, what are the 3 phases it passes through. So, in this lecture, we covered the consequences of stress, what happens inside your body when you are actually going through a stress, a brief overview of that, and then finally, we ended our discussion with the general adaptation syndrome. In the next session, we would be discussing the management of stress. How can we reduce these stresses? How can we make our body and mind function in a better way? Stay tuned for the next lecture. I hope this session was helpful for you. Thank you.